Okay, it's time to make our app do something. Let's take a look at where we got to here. We created this very simple app. I deliberately made it look a little different than the sample app that I showed you originally. It's got a label up here. These are two text fields, and this is a button. And the idea is that when we press this button, it's going to actually do something. It's going to read the text from here and the number from here, and it's going to fill in the label accordingly, saying hello with whatever name you put there. Okay, so no matter what the system you're using to create a graphical user interface, whether it's a Windows form in C# or whether it's an FX application or even a JavaScript application using a website as its user interface, which you'll be learning in semester 3 in PHP and JavaScript. Or maybe it's possibly, no, you're not already learning it. That change is coming later. So yeah, we're talking about semester 3. You'll be learning PHP and JavaScript. No matter what system you're using, what you do is you have events that happen. So there's this whole other architecture that is listening to the user, that is watching the user and listening to the user, and can see when I'm mousing over something, when I'm typing in a box. Every one of these actions I take when I'm pressing a button, each one of them is what's called an event. Okay, and what we can do is, so the system is already set up to handle all these events. Every keystroke is an event. Every mouse movement, every click, every button press is an event. And what we just need to do is register some methods, create some methods and register them to be called when certain events happen. Now, luckily, all that event handling stuff is written for us. We just need to write the little pieces of functionality for our app that we want to happen when an event happens. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're gonna create a method, and then we're gonna have that method called when the user presses the button. So this is going to be step A. Let's call it 2A, since we're in number 2 here and we're in A here. So the first step is to create an event handler method. It says to do it under the to-do private event handlers at the top here. Okay, so this is where we're going to put our methods. Now the app that we've created here, the Hello app, is it doesn't run through a main method. The main method in this program creates an object of type Hello app. Everything is going to be instance. Nothing's going to be static. They're going to be instance methods and instance variables if we need them. It's very important that the method that you create to respond to a button press have the right signature. Okay, so you can call it whatever you want. I'll call it say something, since it's going to happen when the button gets pressed. Whatever you want to call it, I'm going to make it private because there's no need for anybody outside the class to call this method. I'm just going to keep it private so that only we can call it from within here, and only under certain circumstances. It has to be void, return nothing, and it has to accept an action event parameter, and you can actually choose it here once I start typing. It's the JavaFX action event class E. And by selecting it there, it automatically imported it for me. Or you can just type it and then import it later, but it's javafx.event.actionEvent. Okay, maybe I better give this a better name. We'll call that event. Okay, so whenever an event happens, if you've got a method registered to handle that event, the system is going to create an event object that is going to be of type, in this case, action event. And that event object in its instance variables contains a bunch of information about the event. So what button got pressed, where was the mouse when it got pressed, what key got typed, and so on. Whatever's appropriate for that. We're going to be able to mostly ignore it, but we have to receive it because it's going to be sent to us. So for this particular app, we don't need anything that's in the event object. But for now, let's put a system out print line. So say something method called, like that. So that's all we're going to do for now. What we're going to do is we're going to hook up this method and make sure that it gets called when the button is pressed. And we're going to be able to tell whether it's been called by looking at the output from it. Okay, this is normally what we would do. Okay, that's step 2A. Step 2B now. Register the method as an event handler. We do that down here. And again, you can do things in whatever order you want, but I think this is a good way to think about the code. Create the model again. We're not going to do that till next tutorial. I'll explain what that means. We create the GUI components. We added them to the root. We configured them, changing all their information to make them look the way we want and be placed where we want. Step 6, we don't have to do anything for. That's already in there. But here's where we add the event handlers. So we have a button object called the sayIt button. And we're going to set on action is the method. And what we have to pass here is, you can see it's telling me it wants an event handler object. It's got this weird type, event handler, angle brackets action event. That's a type of object it needs here. And in the old days, you had to put a whole bunch of syntax here, to create an object of a special type with curly brackets to put the code in that you wanted to have run and everything. But recent versions of Java have simplified this immensely so that we can just do this. Oh, look, it's even going to fill it in for me. There you go. This : say something. This just said this is what's called a method reference. And you'll understand more about what this, you'll sometimes see something called an arrow function used here as well. You're going to understand a lot more about how this works in your data structures course in 4th semester. I'm just teaching it right now, and I went back to these tutorials to show the students so that they can now understand a bit better about what's going on under the hood. But for now, all we need to know is this is just going to call this method. And we can pass it because it's the right type. If I decided I didn't want to call an action event, or to have an action event parameter, I got a wrong type here now, so that's going to be an error. So that's why I say it has to be the exact right signature here. And if I decide I want it to return an int, that's also going to cause an error. So where is it? It's got an error here because I need to return 0. But now it's going to, maybe it doesn't cause an error down here. No, I guess it doesn't. Okay, you can change the return type, but you're not going to be able to ever do anything with the return type anyway. But you can't change that parameter. It must have that parameter. But you can call it anything you want. Okay, so that should do it. So if I hit Control-Shift F10, here is my Hello app. Let me just pull this up so that we're looking at the output here. When I press Talk to Me, there we go. Every time I press it, it calls that method. Yay! So my app is now doing something. Now this isn't normally how we talk to the user in a graphical user interface. Normally we talk to them through the interface. So we've registered it. Now change the method so that it reads the 2 text fields and uses them to change the label. So if you want to get text from any object, there's usually a getText method that retrieves it for you, and there's a setText method. So you might think there's probably an instance variable inside these objects called text, since that's the standard thing to do, get text and set text. Yes. So we're going to change the method so that it retrieves those items. Oh yeah, but we can't do it yet. This is just a little bit of a setup saying this is what we're going to do. But we have a problem. So the problem is this. We want to, what we're going to want to do for this app is we're going to want to, when the button is pressed, get the text that's here, and then process it, and then set the text of the label. But the problem that we have is that these variables that we've created to hold the text fields are local to this start method. So if I want to get, so for example, if I wanted to print out the name field text, the text that's in the name field, I would do it like this, but that's a syntax error. It can't resolve the symbol, a name field, because I created that variable down here in the start method, and when the start method ended down here, it threw that variable away. So now we're into step 2C. So in step 2C, we have to convert any object that we created down here that we need to access later. We need to change where we declare the variable. So basically, I'm going to declare name field and number field up here. So we have to get a hold of our components. So I'm going to do, these are going to be private. Private text field, name field, and number field, like that. Okay, and you can see, by the way, this has gone purple now, and it's no longer an error because it's referring to name field. Name field is gray here because we're not using it yet, so it's warning us. This is actually going to get us what's called a null pointer exception if I run it right now, because we never actually assigned to this variable. So boom, this is a Whoa, that's a huge one. Null pointer exception, which came from line 22 here. Name field never got assigned anything. So what I need to do is down here, I'm declaring a new local variable called name field. I need to remove the declaration part. And see how they've gone purple? So now I am using the instance variables. The instance variables were created up here, which means that they are accessible throughout the class in non-static methods. So now it should work. Control-Shift F10 again. Talk to me. Your name here. So it read the text that was here. Sam. See that? Namefield.getText. Got it. Okay. We're also going to need to do that with the label because we want to set the text to the label. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to remove the declaration here and move it up to here, but make it private. Private label, output label, like that. And now we could actually do something like this. Output label dot set text. There we go. That's part of it done. So I'm calling the set text method for the output label, and I'm setting it with the text that I get from the name field thing. So if I just hit this button now, it should change that to your name here. Whatever I type here is going to get put there now. That's pretty cool. Okay. All right, so we're on to, we're kind of bled into step 2D there, but now we're definitely on step 2D. We have made these into instance variables. Notice we didn't need to do that with the button. There are some circumstances where you might need to access the button later, but for us, all we're doing is we're creating the button, positioning it, styling it, and then you called its set on action method to hook up the event handler. And after that, we never need the text of the button or to change the text of the button or anything. You can do that. You can use set text and get text on a button object. There might be circumstances where you would want to do that, in which case you would make it an instance variable up here. But generally speaking, don't have more instance variables than you actually need. Okay, so let's break this down here. So we just did step C. Now step D, back in the event handler method, so that's here. Use namefield.getText and output, it says, but I named mine different. I called it output label. Output label.setText to say hello blank, where the blank is the name the user filled in. Okay, so we were almost there. Output label set text. What we want to do is we want to say hello plus the thing that we get. If you want to break this down into different steps, which we probably should do, we can say the user's name is in namefield.getText, like that. And we can say our message, string message is going to be equal to hello plus name plus maybe an exclamation mark, like that. So now we can just do MSG right here. So we get the text of the label, we construct a message string with it, and then we output it to the output label. I think that's it for step D, but let's make sure it works. Sam, hello Sam. Rosa, like in the example, hello Rosa. Put nothing there, it just says hello with an exclamation mark, and so on. All right, but it's not doing anything with this number here. So we need to fix that, and that is the topic of step 2E. So the last step is to repeat the hello message n times, where n is the integer in the second text field. Okay, so we're assuming that they're going to type an integer here. We're going to just use a loop, but we need to read this number, right? So we can read the number easily. But what we can't do is this. So if we go int n for the number of times that we want to do it equals number field dot get text, like that. That doesn't work because, and this is a feature of pretty much any graphical user interface, is that these text boxes take strings. So if you want to interpret what the user's typed as a number or some other type, you have to do an explicit conversion. Now, luckily for us, there are built-in methods. So in the integer class, there's a static method called parseInt. We may have seen this before, I can't remember. Which we can call, and it should, if all goes well, Control-Alt-L. It should convert this to an integer if it can, and store it in integer n. Okay, so and we could do a print line here. Let's print it out. So here it is. So talk to me. What went wrong there? Number format exception. Oh, I accidentally put name field here. So yeah, this is what happens when the user doesn't type a number. You're going to get a number format exception error. This should have been, sorry about that, this should have been number field. So let's run that again. There we go. So we're getting the number 1, and it's been converted to an int. But one thing that's a drawback here is if the user ever types anything that's not an integer, we're going to get this exception. Now, this exception does not crash the program. It just crashed this method here, and then it got caught later on, and the program survived. So I can fix it, go 4, and you can see it's still working. So in this context, an exception doesn't actually crash your program, but it doesn't do what you want. Don't worry about it though. In future, when we get to the exceptions part, we'll learn how to handle them properly, unless you want to reach ahead and learn that for yourself. And then we'll be able to alert the user if something goes wrong with their input. But for now, as always, we're going to assume that if we ask them for an integer, they're going to type an integer. Okay, so we're doing good. We've got our integer. We've got our name. Now we want to say hello over and over and over again. What I would do here is I would just use a for loop. So let's start with a blank message. And then what we can do is we can do msg plus equals like that. So this is going to concatenate onto the end hello, but we want to do that n times. For int I equals 0, I less than n, I plus plus. Like that. Control-Alt-L. I think that'll do it. So that'll just concatenate. We start with an empty string and we concatenate onto it a bunch of times, and then we output it. Let's see what happens. Hello. Okay, I don't want hello your name here. Let's put hello Sam. If I change this to 2, it should say it twice. To 3, it should say it 3 times. It's going to run out of space after a while. Yeah, and that's when it automatically puts that ... there. That's the system doing it for me, recognizing that it can't do it all those times. I think it would be nice to have a space here, actually, between the exclamation mark. I can do that just by adding a space there. Okay, let's put Sam again, 3 times. There we go, that looks a bit better. Okay, we're done. There was an already working version of this that I showed you at the beginning in this week's code called Hello World GUI. I kind of like the way this one turned out better, though. I think it looks a little nicer than that one. But I will also upload this one too. There'll be a package of code for this week that has this in it. And then we're going to move on. What we're going to do next is we're going to do something that's going to set you up for the assignment. So in the assignment, I want you to make a separation again that we've talked about before between model and view. So we're going to use a circle object. We're going to use circle4.java, which is a circle that draws itself on a canvas. And now we're going to put a canvas into our app, and we're going to have the circle draw itself on the canvas, and then we're going to reconfigure it by enabling buttons here to change the radius. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in this app. And when you're done this, I'm hoping that'll serve as a model for the assignment. Okay, the exercises. So if you look at number 2 here, if you did the account manager in the first part, what I want you now to do is hook up whatever you need to do to make the withdraw and deposit buttons work. So what I would do is create a private instance variable up here, a double maybe that keeps, or an int maybe that keeps track of the balance. And then when the user types a number here, if they hit deposit, it adds to the balance and updates the label. So it's going to have to read this, convert it to a number, add it to the balance, and then display that in the label. Withdraw would subtract it from the balance, and so on. Okay, and you can, for this one, you can use double.parseDouble. So if you are using an integer here, it's integer.parseInt. But if you want to do a double, it would be double with a capital D dot parse double, like that. So, and then you have to change that to a double. So if I do this, actually, this is kind of a neat thing to do, because now my app can handle doubles. Like if I say I want it to come out 3.5 times, it's going to allow it, but it's only going to be, I think it's only going to be 3 times. Oh wait, because of the way the loop works. Oh no, it's going to do it 4 times. Yeah, so if I put a partial thing here, it's like 2.5 is going to do it 3 times. Talk to me. And so on. So that's a little bit nicer because it accepts more input. Really though, the preferred width on this number field is not good. I'm going to change it to 100. There we go. So there's my final version. There we go. Now we can add 1.678. And I mean, maybe it doesn't quite do what you want, but it does something. So that's just showing you that if you're doing the account app here, you can use double.parseDouble for that. Okay, we're done. We're going to come back and do number 3 in the next video. So I'll see you there.